if we don't act now, it's going to get much worse. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says targeted measures will get those hotspots through the second COVID-19 wave. What does this mean for Ontario's businesses? Ontario Finance Minister Rod Phillips joins me now. Hello, Minister. Thanks for being there. Nice to see you. I hope you and your families are safe. This means a lot to small businesses. I was listening to one of the small businesses representatives, the Independent Businesses of Canada, saying we're going to expect more bankruptcies now. What do you see down in the next 3, 4, 5 weeks while these businesses are closing? More and more businesses are closing. We don't even know how many of these businesses will not come back. What do you see down the road?
Well, Joyce, this was a very difficult decision, and as Colin D'Mello mentioned, the Premier was, agonized because we know that it's been a very difficult time, particularly for our Main Street businesses. But he and the government had to act decisively, as Colin mentioned. 7 o'clock last night, we saw the new modeling data, as was mentioned, exponential growth, 250% increase in terms of ICU, and the virus starting to seep into age groups other than the younger age group. So those were the signals to move. Now, we had been planning for some time for this, both in terms of the conversations with the federal government, who launched a number of initiatives today, but also in terms of $300 million of support that we will be providing, whether it's paying property taxes or electricity bills to support these businesses. But, the question is not just the next 4 or 5 weeks, Joyce. This is going to be with us until we have a vaccine. There will be these challenges. And that means that we have to be prepared not just now to react as we did. And I think that 28-day shutdown is going to have the effect. That's what our public health and scientists tell us. But again, until we have this vaccine, not just here, but around the world, businesses, communities are having to get used to the fact that we have to be prepared to really fight the virus. And sometimes that's going to make the kind of measures that we took today.
I think, sadly, Minister, you're right. This is not going to go away until we have a vaccine. So my question is, politicians, whether here in Ottawa or at Queen's Park and elsewhere in the country, we're predicting this second wave. This summer, when everybody was happy and the weather was nice and we thought, hey, this isn't so bad, we knew, because you warned us, that there would be a second wave. So my question now is, wasn't this predictable? And, I know you can't get ahead of the pandemic, but you certainly can get ahead of what you can do.
Well, that's why the preparations that we were making, both in terms of our support around electricity bills and gas bills and the support around property taxes, was in place today to be announced with that $300 million program. As you saw as well today, the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, and the Prime Minister announced their program. I spoke at a length with her over the last number of weeks, but last night in particular, as did the Premier. So you see governments preparing and responding. But most importantly, it's going to be what we all do in terms of our own approach. This is something that takes each of us to take our right steps. And this is not, Joyce, about restaurants or gyms or these other facilities that we've had to make these moves up with. This isn't that they've done something wrong. We've had 19 outbreaks in restaurants out of 7,200 in Toronto, for example. But these are places where people gather. We know from the science now that you're 3 times more likely to get the virus if there is a higher level of community spread when you're indoors where you're not wearing a mask for an extended period of time. That's why the steps we took need to be taken, of course, on a targeted basis in the regions that are important. But we're going to have to get used to living with this. We're going to have to provide the supports we need to. And both on the health side and on the economy side, stay ready to help our fellow citizens and our small businesses.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Minister, you're saying this is not the time to think about deficits and debts because this is going to go on and your obligation is going to be on the health side, obviously, but also on the business side to help these businesses stay afloat. They are the big job creators of the country.
Well, we have put a $30 billion program forward this year. Of course, the federal government has made significant investments as well. We'll continue to make those investments. It was a odd day in a way, because we also saw 160,000 jobs created in September, including 80,000+ in the manufacturing sector in Ontario. So we're seeing growth in some areas of our economy, and that's positive. But again, we're dealing with this pandemic now. We're going to be going through some ups and downs. The trajectory is very good today in terms of jobs, much higher than people expected. But again, these surgical approaches, supporting the people who need to be supported through this, that I think is going to be what ourselves, other governments, and frankly, Joyce, it's what's happening around the world in the countries that are taking this seriously, as we work towards a vaccine, which again is not tomorrow. So we have to support everybody, and I think as consumers, support our local small businesses.
Minister Phillips in Toronto, thank you so much for joining us, and have a safe Thanksgiving weekend, sir.
Thank you, Joyce. You too. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.